Department, believing in the cause of protecting people's civil rights, who have left. But the lawyers that are left are now finding themselves in the middle of this lawsuit. The Department of Justice using our taxpayer money to do the bidding of the Republican Party in order to make it more difficult for people to vote. Now, the Help America Vote Act basically changed the rules around voting and made it this requirement to have your driver's license or the last 4 social security numbers. And what happened is there was about 56,000 voters who had already registered to vote who didn't have that information on there because at the time they registered, it was not a requirement. So the Republican Jefferson Griffin was trying to have their vote not count as a result of it. Now, what's happening with this lawsuit is they are saying, okay, now the election is over. We want those same people to basically have their voter registrations canceled as a result. And if they want to re-register to vote, they can. Of course, this is what you call voter suppression, because whenever you make it more difficult for somebody to vote, you suppress the vote. Because here on the Midas Touch network and the community, we have a lot of engaged people who are really focused on the issues. I imagine are very diligent about their voter registration, are very diligent about voting. But the everyday voter is not as informed, let's say, or engaged. They are trying, honestly, to probably work just multiple jobs or caring for a sick child or just dealing with their everyday lives. When you cancel their registration, most people don't even realize it was canceled and they show up to try to vote and they can't vote. And this is how you suppress the vote. So it's really not just about, of course, they registered beforehand. When they registered to vote, they registered legally. You are now changing the terms on them. And by changing the terms on them and just canceling their voter registration, it is going to be so much harder to inform people that happened, get them to vote. And in the meantime, you're going to lose. You are going to lose some of those voters. The Republican Party is okay with less people voting because their policies are unpopular. We are in the majority. If they thought they were in the majority, they wouldn't make it harder to vote. Aging can be tough, especially when you're running around with work and kids. Yes, you may have more wisdom, as they say, but your body sure feels like it's breaking down. Whether or not it's not sleeping as well, not having as much energy, being more stiff. Well, I'm so excited to share with you C15 from Fatty 15. It's the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in more than 90 years. It is an incredible scientific breakthrough to support our long-term health and wellness. And as you guessed it, aging and longevity. Fatty 15 co-founder Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson discovered the benefits of C15 while working with the U.S. Navy to continually improve the health and welfare of aging dolphins. Amazing. Based on over 100 studies, we now know that C15 strengthens our cells and is a key longevity enhancing nutrient, which helps to slow biological aging at the cellular level. In fact, when our cells don't have enough C15, they become fragile and age faster. And when our cells age, our bodies age too. This eventually led to studies finding the first new nutritional deficiency in 75 years called cellular fragility syndrome, caused by a lack of the essential fatty acid C15. As many as 1 in 3 people worldwide may have low C15 levels and cellular fragility syndrome. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help you live healthier, longer. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com mistrial and using the code mistrial at checkout. But it's not just this lawsuit that's making it more difficult for people in North Carolina to vote. The Republicans also did something else recently. As part of the hurricane bill, passed in December, the one that was trying to help them recover from the hurricane, Republicans attached to it a provision to change the power over the Board of Electors, because the Board of Electors was actually the board that stepped in when Jefferson Griffin was trying to throw out those 60,000 votes and say, hey, it's our job to protect votes and elections, and we're the ones that contested it. Well, Republicans didn't like that so much. So they're trying to change who controls the Board of Electors right now. It's always been the governor. And as I said, the governor is a Democrat and has been a Democrat for quite some time now, which means that the Board of Electors has not been controlled by the Republican Party, and they didn't like that. So in December, they added a provision to the hurricane bill that changed the oversight of the Board of Electors, the ability to nominate the electors from the governor to the position of auditor, because the auditor was a newly installed Republican. So if you ask yourself why an auditor would have so much power and control over electors instead of the governor, or has anything to do with elections, well, this again is not about properly overseeing electors, but having control over electors. And this was, of course, contested by the governor, but the state Supreme Court there just basically, for now, kind of affirmed that step. So in the meantime, the Republicans auditor has fired the Democrats on that Board of Electors. So this is a fight for democracy in North Carolina between the DOJ lawsuit, between changing the control of the Board of Electors. The Republican Party sees North Carolina as the state to take away people's right to vote. And have you seen this in legacy media? Have you seen this talked about? Why is this not being talked about everywhere? Because our right to vote is the most fundamental right in our country. Without that, nothing else flows. And you see in real time a takeover, the attempt to suppress the vote and control the vote in North Carolina. That's something not only, of course, North Carolinians would care about. We would all care about. If it wasn't for independent media focusing on this really would be democracy dying in darkness. And just for a moment, let's talk about the lack of fraud in our elections. In 2020, I actually did voter protection work for North Carolina, because there's a bunch of lawyers in swing states who oversee and try to make sure that there is integrity in our elections. And back in 2020, there were a lot of lawsuits about mail-in ballots, because this was new in a lot of states, including North Carolina. And there was a lawsuit that basically made it so that it was a question whether or not certain ballots were going to be counted. The court had basically put a pause on the counting. And what I did was call each of the county electors and find out what they were doing with these ballots. And I was so impressed with how they each handled it, whether or not they were Republican or Democrat. Our county election officials take their job very seriously. They told me exactly the number of ballots that were at issue, how they were tracking them, how they were putting them in a security box. And the fact that there was even somebody like me, a lawyer who was making sure that these county electors were doing their job, is how we know and can have confidence in our elections, because this is replicated in every swing state. I also did poll observing in Clark County in this past election. And I was there. There was even somebody from the Republican Party that was there that was seeing if there was any voter turned away and why they were turned away, and if they were given a provisional ballot. It's at this level that there is oversight in our elections. Not only are county electors themselves and the officials themselves take their jobs very seriously, but there are the Democratic Party observers, there's even Republican Party observers making sure that there's election integrity. So the big lie, this MAGA idea that there's fraud in our elections is not true. And you know it's not even true by the words that they say, because Antonio Gracias just went on a right-wing podcast talking about how he, with DOJ, was helping the DOJ root out the fact that all these immigrants were, voting illegally, and that they were comparing the voter rolls and they were comparing the immigration database and rooting this out. And he goes on this right-wing podcast and he says that they have now just arrested 3 people. Yes, 3 people. That's about the level of fraud